So everything you want to know from these ministers and are ready to ask. We're going to invite you to ask us questions. When you want to ask us a question, just to please stand. We have mic runners. We've got them upstairs in the balcony. We've got them down here. They'll bring the microphone to you. And all we ask is put the microphone up to your chin. That way we can all hear you. So I'm going to ask folks, sit down. If we have really, really, really tough questions that we can't answer, we have over here last term's intern Neon Vong, and we'll just give her one of the microphones. So yeah. So who has a question for us? Just stand. Here we go.
It seems the idea, I'm getting confused about the idea of God and what maybe you folks believe that he, she, it is. It seems like the general message is it's within you and everywhere, and we're part of it. But then when we sing the Lord's Prayer, I get confused, because then you're talking about it being in a kingdom in heaven, which implies a lot of separation. So why do we sing the Lord's Prayer?
Good. Neanne?
Go for it, Neanne.
I've avoided church for a month for this reason. Well, I do have an answer to that question, certainly not the answer. The way my understanding of how we hold it in unity is that God is both immanent and transcendent. And so I think that the reason we tend to focus on talking about God as within us is more historical than anything, in that we're coming from a Christian tradition that tends to focus on God outside of us. So it's not as if in unity we don't believe that God is everywhere present, within and all around us. But I think to compensate for years of believing that God was not within us, that's where we tend to focus on that. But again, I think that when we talk about looking at the world, we do often talk about, wow, I see God in this circumstance. I see God in you. I see God in all that I behold. So I think that when we sing the Lord's Prayer, we can hold it as such without losing the understanding that just because it's without doesn't mean it's not also within. That's my
And I think for me, even though, as you pointed out, there's that sort of separation that exists, especially in the languaging of the Lord's Prayer. As I begin to kind of reframe how I think of God and spirituality and the world around me, I still find it important to have those kind of touchstone pieces from the tradition. And what I do is I just kind of reframe them in a way that works for me. I like to remember, I forget which gospel it is, that the disciples asked Jesus where the kingdom of heaven is, and in short his answer is it's at hand, it's right next to you. And so it's within and it's all around, and that's how I think of the kingdom of heaven when we're singing the Lord's Prayer, is that it's that God within and around. But I would just, I'd encourage you to reframe it in a way that kind of works for you, and just remember that it's a touchstone back to our past and the rich heritage that Christianity's grown out of.
Yeah, very good. Question over here.
Not so much a question, but a comment. I grew up in a church where the traditional version of the Lord's Prayer was sung every Sunday, and even as a little girl, I found it a beautiful song. Mm-hmm. And one of the many things that has caused me to try to have my posterior in some place here every Sunday is because we do sing the Lord's Prayer, and I find it, whether it's the echo version or our traditional version, I find it just purely a beautiful song.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, got one over here.
I can't remember all the words to the Lord's Prayer, but when I'm thinking of what he was talking about, it says something about as done on earth as it is in heaven. Mm-hmm. So it kind of, I think it kind of brings it heaven and earth together.
Well, you know, thank you all for answering the question. And let's see if, I mean, you're all exactly right, exactly right. And let's see, let's move on from the Lord's Prayer into another question that you might have. We got one up here and one over here.
Go ahead over there first.
What is Unities' stand on reincarnation?
Yes, here we go.
I think we'll just go right down the line again this service like we did last Sunday. I think that there's probably about as many beliefs as there is people. For me personally, I believe that we are evolving souls and that we do evolve through lifetimes. If that fits a strict reincarnation, I'm not sure, but that we truly are evolving souls and that we continue on. And I think that what you had said before fits beautifully with that. So I'll pass it on.
Yeah. You know, as far as what Unity would teach about it, Unity doesn't really have a teaching either way. I mean, you can take a handful of ministers and they would all give you a different answer as to whether or not they believed in reincarnation. For me, I believe it's another one of those choices that we get to make. To me and to my theology and spiritual understanding, our ability to choose to see God is so important in what we're doing. And I think reincarnation is another one of those things where we get to choose. So like Reverend Jan was saying, that if our soul's journey feels as though we need to come back and continue what our soul was wanting to do, then absolutely reincarnation is a possibility. But I don't know that I would say everyone gets reincarnated, that it's a choice you get to make to come back or not.
I've never really believed in reincarnation. I do believe that the soul continues on into whatever, and I don't have any idea what that whatever is. I guess if we manifest our beliefs, I guess I will not be reincarnated, and you guys might be. All I know is that the soul is eternal, and someday I'll be able to come back and tell you what happens after death, but at this point I don't know.
From the ministerial perspective, is there any advice that you can give us as we go through our spiritual journeys?
You know, the advice I would give you, and it really relates back to the question we had earlier about God, allow your concept of God to grow. You know, we have a concept of God, and sometimes we go through a dark night of the soul. I don't know if any of you have ever been through the dark night of the soul where you just absolutely question everything. When I went through that experience, one of the times I went through that experience, the guidance that kept coming to me was, your God isn't big enough. Your God isn't big enough. And so I really spent a lot of time in prayer and meditation and allowed my concept of God to grow. And then I tested the teachings that I knew up here. And I said, what do I really know here? And, you know, Unity has its 5 basic teachings. I basically have 1. And that's, you know, I know that to be true here. So just allow, the journey will unfold for you. Just allow it to happen and be willing to let go.
Yeah, and I would just say be willing to be open to changing your viewpoint and changing what you believe, because there's not a one of us that has it 100% figured out yet. And I think it's through dialogue that we grow and gain in our truth and in our understanding. It's through opportunities like this and discussions down in Harmony Hall afterwards, where you talk about what happened and what you learned and what you heard and how that changes your viewpoint. So never be afraid to change what you believe. I know the vision I had of God and how God worked in my life is not the same vision that I had when I started ministerial school. That grew as I was exposed to other belief systems. And so just be open to that and be willing to change and grow.
And for me, I believe that a really important part is my own spiritual practice. And in that time of just simply opening and being, that Bob had touched on some of those dark nights of the soul. And I remember a time of, there were no words. I felt that there were no prayers within me that I could even say. But I sat in my place on my couch every morning at the times that I normally would have been doing my spiritual practice. And at the end of that, I really saw that just in the discipline of being willing, that there was a great amount of inner work that was going on. So there again, just opening to the greatness that we all are, even in those times when we cannot necessarily feel it, it is still there.
We have anybody up in the balcony? Anybody? Yeah, we do.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
So my question is about the law of attraction and new thought and manifestation. I was looking through the program, and we have a guest speaker who cured himself of what was considered incurable. And he used the new thought and all these things that we teach here. Well, my mom also had an incurable disease and used the same tools and the same techniques and all these things and didn't receive a cure or wasn't free from her disease. In fact, she died. I have another friend who's been affirming abundance and success and all these things, and she's broke. And then other people affirm it, and they win the lottery. So how do we account for why some people manifest this new thought practice and why other people seemingly don't? How do we account for that?
And I think one of the words that you said is really important, seemingly. Seemingly don't. We don't know what an individual soul path is for sure. I'm a strong advocate. We're going to have a healing prayer in a few minutes, but I'm a strong advocate of the word wholeness. And I consider death to be part of wholeness. And sometimes our life path just leads us to moving beyond this physical body into the next stage. So why do some people, why are they healed and others die from the experience? I don't know. It's sort of like what Jesus and his disciples, when they were walking along and they saw the man that was born blind, and they asked, who sinned, his father? Did he sin or his father that he was born blind? And Jesus said, no one sinned. It's that to glorify God. So whatever experience we're going through, I think if we can hold on to our God concept, if we can expand that God concept, if we can find the blessing in there. One of my core beliefs is there's only two reasons why anything happens to us. We're either to be blessed or we're to be a blessing. And that's it. So.
Yeah, I would certainly agree with that. That I wish I had an answer that I could say this is why it appears to work in some situations and why others are still having a health challenge or an abundance challenge. And I don't know why it works well for some and others struggle. I do know that one of the things that we do get to do, though, is like Bob said, we get to make a choice about whether we want to be a blessing or be blessed by those experiences. I always kind of liked the Buddhist teaching that all circumstances really are neutral. And it's up to us to identify whether they're good or they're bad, or they're for us or against us. And then we live our lives from that point of this experience is either for me or against me. But yeah, I wish I had a better answer for why in some situations the healing doesn't happen the way we think it should.
And I go along with Bob that, when I pray, it comes from a place of wholeness, because being whole is different than necessarily having a cure. But we can be whole in body, mind, and spirit.
Stephanie, is that you up there?
Yeah, it's me.
Yeah, well, when you figure out the one about winning the lottery, will you let us know?
Well, that's really, so I have this dear friend, and she's one of the most generous and spiritual people I know, and she's been working so hard, and she has an abundance mentality, but she really has a desire to move to Hawaii. And she's been just affirming this for 10 years. And it just keeps blowing up in her face. And honestly, she's losing faith. And I'm at a point where I really don't know what to say to her anymore, because she's doing everything right. So it's just a little bit challenging in that situation to be of comfort or be of service to her when I've said everything I know to say, and all I do now is just love her. But there's got to be something we're missing in those situations, because everything in her is lined up with that.
You know, I wonder if God might have another plan. And I know that may be a cop-out, and I don't mean it to be a cop-out, but I think we'd all be living in Hawaii and have won the lottery by now.
Sure.
You know.
Well, yeah, but still yet then, how do we encourage one another and ourselves to maintain faith? If you say, well, God's got a plan, so I appreciate that too, but in the meantime,
I think the biggest thing that she can do right now, a couple of things. I always invite people to, if they're going through a challenge in their life, to pray for others for that challenge, because sometimes there's scientific studies that show that the person who sends out the prayer receives much more benefit than the recipient of the prayer. So if you're going through a healing experience in your life, a healing need, start praying for others for healing and see if that doesn't magnify things for you. The other thing is you've just got to trust, and things don't always work out the way we want them to at all. And you've just got to let go, and you've got to trust God. And you know, it's a point, you've moved to a point of surrender, of just total surrender. And it's not always too easy to do that. So I don't have a really good answer for you. Do we have any easier questions out there?
A question. I just wanted to make a comment. Sure. It's on God's timeline, what happens, not ours. If you go back through when, back in the Bible, when Joseph was betrayed by his brothers and sold and went to Egypt, he went through many trials and tribulations, but on God's timeline, he became very important in Egypt and ended up helping his family. That's just one of the examples I can think of. King David, when he became king, he was anointed as a young man, yet it took him many, many years to get where he was the king, but that was when God was ready for him. So what I can say to you is continue to support your friend, love her, support her, but it's on God's timeline, not ours.
You know, when you all know my story, and my wife got breast cancer, it wasn't at all what we had anticipated as far as our journey was concerned. And the procedures that she had to go through were not at all what we had in mind. And it really ended up being a blessing. She ended up being such a blessing to other women who were going through that. And I've shared the story with you before, but I'll never forget. We were sitting in the cancer center, and Lita was ready to go in for her chemo, and bald. And this woman with beautiful, beautiful long hair, all the way to the small of her back, came up to Alita and just said, "How soon before I lose my hair?" And that's when Alita really discovered that so many people who are going through cancer don't really know what happens. The doctors tell you, but you really, if you can sit down with another person who's been through that experience and share with them in a heart-to-heart way, you can be a real blessing to them. And she ended up being a huge, huge, huge blessing. And it's not a path we would have chosen. Another question.
I wanted to ask about how fear figures into the soul's journey, because I think in my own personal experience, the biggest fears I've had manifest, and if I master those fears on my soul's journey, they don't ever return. And it's about increasing faith and decreasing fear. So I wanted to get your input on that, because that's what the Bible says, the greatest fear you have is upon you. And self-mastery, I think, is the soul, for me, the soul's journey.
Go ahead.
All right. Yeah, I think, you know, there are different types of fears that can pop up for us. And where we have to be careful with the fear is not letting the fear overcome that knowledge like you were talking about, that God's going to pull you through this, that God's going to guide you through this. Then there's also what I like to call good fear. I think a lot of times we just kind of put all of the fear in one basket and say it's bad and we don't want to have it. And there are moments of what I call good fear, those moments where, you know, you're walking down the alleyway and you get the hairs on the back of your neck start to stand up that tell you maybe something's not right here. These are good fears to have. But the caution is when all of that fear becomes so much that it stops you from moving forward. I think as I look back on the things that have been fears for me in my life, I can relate them all back to something that happened when I was younger, that taught me I shouldn't do this or I shouldn't do that, or you know, don't speak up out of turn because they don't want to hear what you're having to say, because I had a bad experience when I was younger with something like that. And so those fears that come up that are in that area can kind of be useful tools to help you figure out why you do certain things in your life, why you behave the way you do, and then that lets you change them. So the fear can absolutely be an indicator of what's going on for you and where you need to make some changes in life to realize more of your God potential.
And I think this is one of the reasons that I so love Unity, is because if I find myself in a fear place, I can see that it's coming from a place of lack, of not enough, or I'm not good enough, or a lack. And the truth is, we truly do, folks, have all that we need, desire for what we have been called to do within us. And I have seen that as I have just let go of that fear and just taken that step, just a step, and start walking, it's amazing the energy that comes forth, and I'm moving in a whole different direction. I too believe that, you know, this lifetime is self-mastery. It's in knowing the truth of who, deeply knowing that in those times when we may feel fear, when we may feel less than, that we say, but that's not the truth of who I am, and we go forward. So yes, let it rise up and move through it.
You know, is it a fear to never turn your back on a raccoon?
Bob?
He's a friendly raccoon. He's waving.
Yeah. Bob, like I told you before, that raccoon is really up there for me today. I came home from my vacation and they had just so upset my entire balcony. And I was not feeling very loving thoughts towards the raccoons. And so I walked in and sat down this morning, and what's on the screen? The raccoon.
Jerry Jampolsky has, I don't know if it's still in print, he has a really good book called Love is Letting Go of Fear, and it's based on Course in Miracles. And so I just say, if you're in a place of fear, find out what you can love more. We have time for one more, and I think we had one back over here that was in line. So,
I'm not a member of Unity of Overland Park, but I come here quite often when I'm in town. I grew up in a church that, when I was a boy, you know, every time I went to church, they were telling us that if we didn't do this, we didn't do that, of course, we would burn in hell. And I just want to thank all of you, because when I come here, I don't feel that way. So you make me feel very comfortable in a church, and so I just want to thank you for being here, and I enjoy coming here when I'm in town. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. We want to close this portion of the service because of an awareness that has come to us. Last week, Reverend Jan was out, and so all the prayer requests came past my desk. And First, I was surprised by the number of them. These are prayer requests that you folks have written. You put them in the prayer boxes. You've sent your prayer requests in on the website and things like that. And they really fell into categories. There was healing prayer requests, there was divine order, love, wisdom prayer requests, and there was abundance prayer requests. And I thought, we are a divinely ordered, divinely guided prayer group, all of us here. And if these numbers of these prayer requests are out there, what would happen if we just took a few minutes today and just focused on these 3 areas of prayer? And just all of us together focused on this energy of prayer. As we do this, I invite you to become aware of the energy you're going to feel. Because it was pretty amazing at 9 o'clock. You could just feel this vortex of energy just going round and round the sanctuary. So if you have a prayer request, and no matter, whatever it is, the healing, the wholeness, the direction, the guidance, the divine order, the abundance, we invite you just for these next few moments just to let it go and allow God to have expression through you. And the prayer chaplains don't know this, but I'm going to ask the prayer chaplains, if you would just take a position on the outside of the walls here, all of you who are here today, just to hold this, all of us, in prayer. And so, Jan, we'll start.
And so we breathe deeply into the energy of this space. We are so grateful. And we open ourselves wide to the wholeness that we are. Wholeness in body, mind, and spirit. And for anyone this day feeling a health challenge, walking this path, we see the light of God sourcing every cell in your being with light of God. We see your organs working synchronistically. We claim and hold the wholeness that you are. For spiritual, emotional challenges, I simply say, peace, be still. Know that the peace of God, which passes all understanding, is right here, right now. And just simply rest in that knowing that all is well.
And so we bring to mind anyone who has a need for divine order, for guidance in their lives. We know and affirm in this moment that the power of God is strong within them, that Christ light is shining bright within them, and we see that Christ light guiding them to the perfect relationship, to the perfect next step in their spiritual journey. And we see that same Christ light shining in the life of the individual whom they are attracting to them right now. We see it guiding and directing them. And we know and affirm for them and for all of us that divine order is active in our lives, that the power and presence of God goes forward, making any crooked path straight, lighting its way, shining its light and guiding us to the right and perfect spot for us. We are illumined and filled in this moment with divine order and divine guidance. We claim it as ours now and know that it is so.
And I invite you just to take a deep breath and just let go of anything, any obstacle that's holding you back from receiving your good. For the good that you're seeking is seeking you. And we just need to remove whatever obstacle is in the way, just to let it go, to know that abundance is truly ours, that God is the source of our good, that we live in an abundant universe. And as we open our minds and our hearts and our souls to God's abundance, it flows through us and from us, touching all those people around us. And for those who are looking for jobs, we just see the perfect right position unfolding for you. A place where you can be blessed and you can be a blessing. So for the abundance that's right now manifesting, we are so very grateful. For the wholeness that is now being experienced, we do give thanks. And for the divine order, the love that's now manifesting in our lives, we truly, truly give thanks to God. And so for all these gifts of God, we just say amen and amen.